Thank you for hopping on this week's rendition of the hemp update call. Couple little things have dropped this week and that I think are very, very good and very awesome. That being said and done, I teased it out for everybody. Dwayne's going to talk about it. So, Mr. Dwayne Carson,
Yeah, thank
what's
you
going
very
on?
much, guys. Thank you, Brian. One, I am very not thankful to be back in DC when I was on the beach with my dog last week, living the life that you guys live on a daily basis. But here I am back in DC with a little bit of an update of what's going on. House and Senate, very intense this week. We're heading up to like the dog days of when it comes to Capitol Hill appropriations, NDA, National Defense Authorization Act, stuff like that's coming down the pipe. There's a supplemental that's being talked about. So the Hill is full gas right now. Members came in on Tuesday. They leave tomorrow. Senate's full go as well. But the one thing that I definitely wanted to touch base on, and then Brian can come over the top, is yesterday, as we anticipated at Hifa, OMB Director Russ Vogt sent a letter to the Hill, focusing on things that they're looking for in a supplemental. Needless to say, hemp came up. Brian, would you mind dropping that in the chat so people can take a look at the letter that Russ sent? And what this allows you guys to kind of see is, the file that Brian is sharing, which is basically saying from the White House to the Hill, hey, we want to have the conversation on hemp. We want to talk about, the definition, and we want to get this to a place where it can be regulated on the federal level. That was the intent behind the letter. I think that I will say that after that letter was sent to the Hill, I'm aware that certain members of Congress were notified, as well as leadership in both chambers was notified of the intent of the letter. And then to emphasize even more, our allies on both sides of the aisle, so not just Republicans, also Democrats, were notified of the letter to be able to say that, again, this is a bipartisan issue. It's not a partisan issue. It's not a House versus Senate issue. This is an issue that is running out of time and needs to be dealt with. And, giving our allies another pathway to saying, hey, something needs to get done. So that was kind of the big news of this week. We've been hearing that this was coming. Glad to see the administration take another step forward and saying we need to change this. Glad to talk to our friends on the Dem side who are saying this is good to put pressure where pressure is needed in both the House and the Senate. So with that being said, Brian, I'll turn it back over to you to see if you have anything to come over the top with.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just read for you guys the line in the letter, and I dropped it into the chat, but I think it's important for you guys to hear, because the Trump administration has been incredibly supportive of the hemp industry, as you guys have known. I think one of the only reasons why we have had a lifeline and a extra push that we need. I wouldn't call it a lifeline, but the extra push that is going to be needed to get it done this year is because of the pressure that's coming from the White House. I think they want to see this regulated. They don't want an unregulated marketplace. They don't want that, and neither do we. I would say 99% of the people on this call do not want an unregulated marketplace. We want the guardrails. We want consumers to be safe, but we want our jobs and our businesses to have the guardrails to be properly protected so we know what we can and cannot do because states make up rules on the fly, as many of you know. I think should we get this regulatory package done and passed this year, I think life is going to become a lot easier in states, and everyone will be able to breathe a breath of fresh air and start moving and grooving, in a place of more certainty. And there's nothing more than I want at the end of the day for all of you guys to go back to your employees and say, hell yeah, we have a job past November. And that's, at the end of the day, that's the thing that has driven the team over at Haifa most out of anything is to make sure we protect American jobs. And so, I've been there. I understand the feeling of uncomfort of not knowing your future. And I know a lot of your guys that are getting paid, pretty decent dollars. they want to keep those jobs, and they've done a great job for you guys. So that being said, I'll read what the administration is very much aware of the 500,000 jobs that could very easily go away should this entire industry uh, not get the regulation and protection that it needs. And I stress the entire industry, not a segment of the industry that gets carved out. Um, they want to see the protection of the entire industry. So I'll read what was in the letter. Furthermore, the administration requests additional authorities that it strongly supports. These authorities include revising the federal regulation of hemp to ensure the fair treatment of hemp products in a manner consistent with Amendment 54 offered to H.R. 8646 in the House Rules Committee, or
Pause,
at a minimum,
pause, Brian. Pause, Brian. What amendment was that? Was that the Andy Barr amendment? Is the Andy Barr amendment? That's right. Continue. Sorry.
in the House Rules Committee, or at a minimum, an extension of the implementation of the regulatory framework put in place by 781 of Public Law 119-37. So that, my friends, is what we needed to see and what members of Congress needed to see to, hopefully motivate some action. And this letter was sent with the ask of some kind of inclusion in a supplemental of some sort.
Right.
So won't go too far into the details of that and what we've been working on there.
But
But
I'll say, Brian, if you wouldn't mind real quick, I would just say that the great thing for me about this is the administration continuing. But the thing that Brian and I, and you've heard us harp on this all the time, this cannot be a partisan exercise, right? Like we went
correct.
to our allies, on the Dem side, whether it's the Klobuchars, the Smiths, whether it's Angie Craig's, we wanted to show this to our allies and say, hey, this is a bipartisan, this is still bipartisan. It's just where we need a little bit more of a help, a push, some cover on the Republican side. We are starting to get that, or we're continuing to get that from the administration. Now, again, the next step that I've told our allies is, they say faith without works is dead. So, the administration has kind of came over the top and sent something to the Hill. And so now I know our allies are gathering on the Hill and talking about the next steps forward. That's all I can really say right now. But I will say that it was a welcome letter that our allies received. And as one of our allies members said, now it's about education. Now it's continuing to get this in the hands of other members on both sides of the aisle in both chambers and saying, this is what's being requested on one side, and on the other side saying we can continue to build the coalition. So with that, I feel a lot better than I did about 48 hours ago.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess what we're looking for, and guys, just to manage expectations here, we're still waiting on for one shoe to drop. That first shoe is going to be the hemp regulatory bill, and not anything that's been filed or talked about, which is a carve out for a specific industry, but the segment of the industry. But what we're waiting on to drop is the regulatory package that Congressman Barr has been working on. And he's been doing it in a manner of, I would say, a manner of working across the aisle. He's been working with a Democrat, and various Democrat members are aware of what he's been working on. And so when the time comes, I imagine early next week, because Congress is in session, they won't be in session the following week. So I imagine next week, when Congress returns to session, that bill is going to drop. Not saying 100%, because every other week, just as we've felt like it's going to drop, something happens that is a positive, like a better definition or another way to tweak the bill so that, I'll give you guys an example. They received feedback on how to the hemp regulatory structure would better interact with one of the federal agencies from the federal agency themselves. So that took a little bit extra time for them to implement that language on the regulatory side, which is good. I mean, these are good things. I mean, what we're doing in this short time frame takes members of Congress 2, 3, 4 years to get a regulatory package done for other industries. And what we've been able to do in about 3 months, 4 months time, in working with Congressman Barr is really flesh out um, a regulatory structure that started with a recommendation from the White House to him, that his team has done a phenomenal job. I mean, Congressman Barr's team is absolutely professional and incredible. And they've been working through all of the different stakeholders and all of the different groups that have been meeting with them. And they've taken everybody's feedback, incorporated elements, and so what they're now working through is just the final agency or regulatory framework and structures. And so that's why I believe pieces of this have been, not slow, but they've been moving very
Taking too
quickly.
long. I can say it. I'll say what you don't want to say. Taking too long. And again, it's when different departments want to, put their piece of the pie in. Sometimes it draws things out, but we want to get it right, but we want it in a timely fashion. So, you
And I
know,
think it's important to get it right
right.
because it's going to make sure that there's no question when this goes to the states. And let's just say we have our favorite lieutenant governor from Texas that tries to take liberties with how he views the federal government's definition on things, and say, oh, no, that's what this really means. And we're going to pass this into law into Texas. No, what we're going to now have is a really regulated, well-structured industry coming from the federal government, which will make our fight once we go into Texas again for next legislative session. And we go into the fight with our colleagues over at Texas Hemp Business Council and others, to properly regulate this industry in Texas. It's going to make our lives a lot easier. So that being said, we're very optimistic that we have a bill dropping in Congress next week with a number of co-signers and original co-signers. And the other good positive update here is we have a lot of really good movement on the Senate side as well. I think we've
Mhm.
identified our champions that are going to carry a very, very similar, if not photographic copy of this bill, word for word, on the Senate side. That part starts to move the ball forward. And from there, rock on. Then
That's
we
where we're
get
going.
loud. Then we get
Yep.
make those COAs go very, very loudly and across the country. And that's the next phase of this. So, Dwayne, unless you got anything else you want to add, buddy.
Let's
Uh,
take a couple questions. I think we're right where we want to be on time. Let's see.
uh, Someone said the chat is disabled. I don't think it is. I'm looking at it right now.
Is it chat? I see
I
full
dropped it.
chat.
I dropped the image in the chat, so
Uh-huh.
you guys should be able to see it. Maybe I'll try to save the image as a JPEG instead of .ehic. I don't know what the hell that is.
Well, while you do that, Okay, yeah, people are saying they can't see the letter. Okay,
I'll figure
I'll
out
go.
technology. You go
Yeah, I'll
do.
start with if I mispronounce this, I apologize. Belky Phillips. I do appreciate your efforts. I know you keep saying it's bipartisan, but it feels like your focus is mostly Republican. My representatives are Republican and none of them support this. I feel many Democrats would be on board. Yes, I think you're absolutely correct in what you're saying on the later end. If we had to do a synopsis of where the majority of the support lies on hemp, it would be on the Dem side. But there's still a lot of Dems that want to see regulation. They do not want status quo. They want to see something, they want to see something brought up on a federal level, give states direction. What we've seen on the Republican side is more education. And Phillips, that's why we keep saying that it takes a lot of education. It takes a lot of really sitting down more Republican members, especially in the Senate, because it's a legacy item for Mitch McConnell, right? And Andy Harris. And a lot of these guys have told a lot of these members, frankly, half truths, right? And so that's what we've been doing over the last 6 to 7 months, is really educating Republicans, because currently you have a Republican thin majority in the House. as well as a thin majority in the Senate. Administration is Republican as well. But you have an administration who's supportive of our efforts. You've got a growing number of Republicans in the House. You've got a great amount of Democrats in the House, right? And you've got a good amount of Democrats in the Senate. Now, I will say, and Brian, you can say this as well, in November, the problem that we ran into where a lot of Democrats weren't aware of everything going on and the industry potentially having a 1 year delay and ban, right? And so that's why you saw the Rand Paul amendment get such bad feedback and bad votes because there were members in the Senate that came up to Rand Paul after and said, I'm sorry, hold up. How did this get attached to opening it up to federal government? Right. So that's where we've started from. I don't disagree with what you're saying, but I will say it's more on the Dem side of getting them in a good, getting them updated on what's going on, and on the Republican side, educating them as to how this is a issue in November for them, right? And it's something that their constituents want. So I hope that answered your question, Brian.
Yeah, and I'll add too. I saw a comment about like, why are you guys only working on one side? That has not been the case. We were, I think, the first association to actually fully engage a Dem firm. When we went back in time, back in September, right, when we first started punching in on the federal side, Hifa started punching in after Texas, after we secured the victory in Texas where we didn't get banned. We immediately dove right into the federal side. And just to give everyone another history lesson, in case you're new here, we started engaging on the federal side. Dwayne and I were the first ones in the entire industry to break it to everybody that the ban was coming. Took a number of our colleagues in some of the other associations about 2 days to verify that was actually the case. But me and Dwayne sat down, we saw the bill, we saw the verbiage of the ban, and that's when we knew it was real. And one of the things that we have always tried our best to be is honest with everybody. And unlike some of the other groups that like to use fear to raise dollars, that's not how we operate. We always will take dollars and money. That's important. You got to keep the beast fed, and we have to continue to pay for, our infrastructure. But a month prior to the bill, the industry getting the ban in November, number of folks were telling everybody that the industry was going to get banned during, I forget what it was, Dwayne. It was like
Shutdown. It was during the shutdown.
it was during the start of the shutdown. There was going to be some trickery that was going to be played that was going to ban the industry, and that never came to fruition. But folks raised a lot of money off of it, and we were sitting there. We're like, when Dwayne heard about it, Dwayne's like, "Yo, Brian, this ain't real. Like, what are they talking about?" And that was bad intel from a lobbyist. So, um, I say all this because when we started looking at uh, the playing field of where all the other associations were operating, who they've been engaging, the first thing that we identified was we had a weakness in the Senate. And because all of us were like, yay, Rand Paul, we have Rand Paul, Rand Paul, Rand Paul. And that's kind of it. And we didn't expand the scope beyond Rand Paul. So that was the first thing we did, was we expanded our lobby team to start to break into the Senate. We've done a really good job of doing that, which is why our team's been working with various senators. Not going to say the names just yet. But we've been working with various Republican senators and Democrat senators because right after we started to fix the problem on the Senate side, we then hired and brought in a Democrat firm because we knew we had to shore up that flank because everyone was always like, Barr, Comer, yay, we've got this in the House. No, it's much bigger than that. And I would say, I mean, that's why our team at some point peaked to about 10, 11 different lobbyists that we've engaged and utilized so we could get those relationships. And so we have been working everybody across the aisle in every party. And that's something that's important because that's the game you have to play here in DC, especially when you're dealing with America's number one most bipartisan issue, which is based on the polling that we've done in multiple states and nationally. This is the most bipartisan issue outside of, I think, maybe voter ID, right? But that's something that's important. So when there's a bipartisan issue, of course, we're going to operate in a bipartisan way. Now, we might talk a little bit more about Republicans today because right now, who are the ones that control the House, the Senate, and the White House? So that's really a function of who is able to call up which item And who do you have to work with that's in leadership? Now we've been working with the leadership on in the minority on this as well. So I just want everyone to understand we've been working the hell out of everyone, no matter what your party is. This
Right.
is a bipartisan issue. This is a bipartisan hemp organization.
And I'll also say, just to finish that, I know we've got a couple more questions to do in 9 minutes. The other thing that I would just really harp on is, you asked why, and some people asking why we're focusing on Republicans too much as well. It's like, because if some of the Dems who have been the saving grace to get that year implementation, because originally it didn't have the year implementation, but it was actually Senate Dems who got the year implementation with McConnell when everything happened. So to be able to go back to those guys and say, hey, you now have more cover on the right, right? Well, you may be on the left. There is cover on the right coming from the administration. There is cover on the right from members. So this is a bipartisan issue. So when you do have a must-pass vehicle that comes down the pipe, and you bring this up, you do have allies on the other side, right? And so the more that we can have allies on that other side, that strengthens their position when they're negotiating on whatever a supplemental may be, an end of the year package may be, or a must-pass item may be.
All right. Let's see here. What question do?
Barbara, District Hemp. Will these federal rules trump more restrictive state laws? If put into place and implemented, yes.
Mm.
Um, Go ahead.
Only caveat there is because a number of Republicans requested it, and as well as Democrats, there is a states' rights issue here. So
Oh, did they put that provision in there?
there is a provision. There will be a
Okay.
provision in the bill. Not I'm separating this from what the White House requested and asked for. There is a provision in there that does give states the opportunity, similar to how they do it in alcohol. States can regulate alcohol in a stricter manner than they can how the federal government regulates it, and so it does give people the ability for states' rights, which is what the Republic is all about. States do have the opportunity to put in stricter laws. However, because now there is a federal regulatory package, and I've heard this in Texas, I've heard this in Missouri, people have heard this in North Carolina, because there is no federal precedent. Pennsylvania, another great example. Because there is no precedent at a federal level, states are coming up with whatever the hell they're going to come up with on what they think the federal government would do. Now they know what the Fed does, and I heard it straight out of one of the governor's mouths in a very red state that if the federal government had it in law, he would be hands off. But because there is no real regulatory structure, he's going to figure out the rulemaking process on his own until the Fed comes in. So,
Yeah. All right, I got one. Brick and mortar tar hemp. I'm hoping you're from North Carolina if you are tar hemp. With all due respect, thank you for this update, but unless it is in law, we cannot celebrate this uncertainty. Yes, but we can celebrate the momentum. And that's not a dig at you. That's just saying, sometimes even Brian and I up here in DC, where you're continually talking and talking and talking and you're working, and then we get on this call and sometimes it feels like we're giving the same update, right? It's always good to have something that we can show to you guys that are saying, okay, it's been 2 to 3 weeks of kind of hearing that it's coming, and then now something does come. And we can show you like, hey, all those behind the scene conversations that we've been having, it has yielded something. It's not the final, right? We're not stopping right now. But it is good sometimes to show you the momentum, but then also to let you know all the hard work that Hifa and their team and others in the industry, okay? Others in the industry, but Hifa and their team are doing behind the scenes to work their asses off to get something done before the deadline. Brian, you see anyone you want to take?
man, are there efforts to get the likes. I guess this is a good question, and I'll answer it because I kind of like this person. Are there efforts to get the likes of Byron Donald's support for this, as he is also running for governor, who has supported medical, but typically not hemp, from my understanding. We've engaged with Byron's office. We've met with Byron's office. He knows it's an issue. He knows it's a problem.
Mhm.
I'm not going to speak for the congressman, but if I'm going to guess, when this comes up for a potential vote, I'd imagine he'd be voting to not get rid of 20, 30, 40,000 jobs that are just in Florida alone. And he looks at that, if he's going to run for governor, and I assume he's going to win the governor's race. But I assume he's going to want to have that as potential taxable revenue, as with anybody that is also running for governor in those states. But again, I'm not speaking for him. I don't do that. But we've had very favorable conversations with his office, as with a number of other members. Unfortunately, he doesn't really have to deal with this issue until it comes up to vote because he's not serving on any of the committees that we've been engaging with.
Right.
And that's why, and just to give everyone an idea, like there's 500 of these guys, right? We're not dealing with all 500. We're starting with the most relevant committees that the hemp industry touches. And Dwayne, do you want to just walk everybody through what those are?
Sure, absolutely. So I'm the relevant committee that that him touches can go through a plethora. All of them have a certain amount of jurisdiction. First, of course, everyone would say the Agriculture Committee, right? Second would be Energy and Commerce, right? As they oversee, of course, HHS and some of the other components. Third, I would say Appropriations. Remember, funding as opposed to funding and authorization run parallel. Well, they should run parallel. We found out that they didn't in November. And then I'd say Ways and Means from the tax component of it. You could potentially bring in a small business committee aspect of it, but I think we're stretching right there. But those would be the four committees that you would look at. And so what we've tried to do is find champions and people who are educated to talk about this issue on each one of the committees. That's why so many times you hear me speaking about Morgan Griffith and Mark Vesey, the chairman and ranking member of Energy and Commerce HHS Subcommittee. There's other members, but we look at those committees and try to educate and really have the conversations of how to do this, how to regulate this at a certain level. So some may say Andy Barr's not on any of those committees, but he's also from Kentucky, and he's been one that's wanted to take this issue on from the get-go. So
Yeah, and he's also kind of viewed as like the governor of folks in the House. Everyone respects him, everyone
right,
likes him. He's got a lot of gravitas. And and that's also a caveat to that. So anywho,
right.
well, I think we're brushing up against the time. Dwayne, is there one question you want to take that is
Yeah,
awesome
I
and
got
exciting?
one. Your Place LLC at yahoo.com. Will the bill possibly drop in next week? Would you recommend we call our representatives before so they know what we want or wait until after? I'll go first and let you answer that, Brian. A part of me always says I would rather have a bill number that we can put behind. And so I personally would say let us get the bill drop, get an HR number, get that HR number to you, a house res. So when you talk to your member of Congress, you know exactly what their LA, their district staffer, they can look at. So I would always say, hopefully they drop this bill next week, and then we can really start amping up the momentum. So I would say after the bills drop, but Brian, I defer it for you. Happy to disagree on that one.
No, no, don't disagree at all. I mean, it is helpful to have a bill number now. I do think it's worthwhile. And like I said, we'll be providing out to everybody as soon as there is a bill, a CTA, and with what to say and what to pass on to members of Congress, because what in essence we're going to be asking for them to do is vote on, the bill, though we think a standalone is going to be a much more of an uphill battle. But we're going to ask them to also include the Andy Barr language to be directly moved into whatever supplemental or whatever. We're going to finesse the verbiage, and we'll have that out to everybody early next week as soon as the bill drops. But that's kind of the plan that we're working off of right now. And so yeah,
Okay.
but I think it's always worthwhile to annoy members of Congress and let
Peacefully,
them know that you're
peacefully,
paying attention
peacefully, peacefully.
peacefully, peacefully, please. Don't be that guy.
Yeah.
But we always encourage everyone to reach out to members of Congress and remind them that we need to be regulated, and otherwise they're going to put 500,000 people out of a job by November, which is unfortunate. And they don't want to do that going into an election year.
And that's what
So
Brian just hit on that I thought was very, very key. They don't want to do that going into an election year, but it is up to us to remind them that this is an election item. This is an election issue. This is a midterm, where every seat could be, I mean, not every seat, but at least about 20 to 25 of them could be decided by 5 to 15,000 votes, right? And that may just be a household that's going to be affected by this, and I think that that's something that members of Congress need to hear between on both sides of the aisle in both chambers between now and election day. All right, Brian, we have run out of time.
Yeah, so we'll see everybody next week. We'll do a special 4th of July rendition on Thursday. I'll be wearing patriotic colors. I'll also be at my family reunion, so I'll be doing it live from Woodstock, New York. Peace and love. And go United States men's soccer
Soccer
team.
team,
Let's go. Let's get a win over Turkey tonight, guys. And Dwayne, you got any other closing thoughts?
USA. Have a good one, guys.
Peace.